There we go. So to get into this, thank you so much for joining. Like we say, we're here to talk about the Digital Democracies and We Hope call out, which has just gone live. We Hope is a project that is collecting testimonials from survivors of conflict, and we're asking artists to work with this lived experience from people to create an interactive digital animation. I nearly said imagination. And the way that work will be presented will be at Frequency Festival of Digital Culture, which is in Lincoln in October of this year. And it will be presented alongside a commissioned choral piece that we will be working on over the next couple of months to update the old notion of cantastoria. Cantastoria was a storytelling tradition that used images and song to tell a story. So we are looking for a digital update for the purposes of this project. To talk a little bit more about We Hope, I'm going to pass you over to Heather, who has more information about the project. And if you have any questions as well, if you want to pop those in the chat, we can talk about any questions relating to the project at the end of this section.
Thanks, Sam. So the long title of We Hope is Out of War Experiences, Hope for the Future. We Hope. This was a project which we applied for in early 2019 to Creative Europe, to a call which was about promoting social inclusion across Europe, especially against the background of tensions over migration into Europe, tensions around the so-called hostile environment in the UK, and so on. Creative Europe is an EU-funded project, so this was probably one of the last projects in the UK to have got funding from Creative Europe for the moment, because UK participants are no longer eligible to lead these projects. They can still participate but not lead. So our project kicked off in 2019 and it comes to a close in October 2022. It is what is called a small scale project, which means it has funding of around 200,000 euros. We have 6 partners in our project, 1 in Italy, 2 in Greece, 1 in France, and 2 in the UK, and we have 3 associate partners, 2 in Italy, and Laura represents one of them, as well as the Manchester Refugee Support Network in the UK. We also work very, very closely with the Kent Refugee Action Network, and they are really key players in terms of facilitating social inclusion and the welcoming of refugees to the UK. So those are the people who've been involved in the project. It's true to say, I think, that our project has been quite negatively impacted by the pandemic, especially because of the nature of the research that we do and the people who we want to reach. But it is all picking up again now, which is wonderful. And it's so great that we've reached this stage of being able to think about the actual creative outputs that we are committed to. So there are 2 of these. One of them is to build a digital archive of testimonies of people who have experienced war and who have come through that process in some way, and whose experiences we feel might provide a source of inspiration to others. So the stories that we're working with are largely to do with people who have arrived from war-torn environments into Europe in recent years, and this can be anything up to 20 years being recent. I mean, we have talked to people who've been established here for decades. We've been also talking to people who have arrived very recently, but more importantly, we are including stories of those who themselves experienced war in Europe long ago under the bombs. of the Second World War, because there are some absolutely amazing stories. And even though we can't put the people together in to talk in dialogue, we can put their stories together. So that's the purpose of this digital archive, is putting all of these stories of which really, I think, are symbolic of the title of our project, We Hope. Out of war experiences, hope for the future. So creating this digital archive is happening very rapidly at the moment, and the idea is that artists will be able to access these stories and derive inspiration from them in terms of creating the artwork. But Sam's going to talk a bit more about that in a moment. But that is ultimately the other big part of this, is this creative artwork, for which the call out we're talking about today. So, I mean, the aims of all of this are to promote the values of the European Union in terms of respect, tolerance, and mutual understanding, to promote transnational mobility of stories, art forms, as well as artists, even in these very strange times of the pandemic. Obviously, our project began before this, and we've had to make adaptations as to how we functioned, and also to strengthen access to European culture for marginalized groups. Thank you, Sam.
That's great, thank you very much. And as part of the partnership of this project as well, we are working with a project called Digital Democracies that Threshold is the lead for, which is a national partnership project that explores technology-enabled arts in public spaces. It's a festival-led partnership that has been running since 2020, although understandably activity paused for a while last year. But the main programme looks at R&D commissioning, artist developments, emerging debates, and allows us to share that information more widely across the sector. The notion is about development of digital work for public spaces. We've seen that projection work has grown in popularity and also in scale over the last couple of years and longer. And what we're looking at with Digital Democracies is actually how we can work with artists, open up wider technical networks to develop that audience experience further. So given like the social purpose of the We Hope project, and given the social purpose of Digital Democracies, it was a really great fit to come together to take these stories, to take this lived experience and look at new forms of presentation in public spaces. So moving on to the actual call out, what we are looking for in terms of ideas. I've clicked wildly, I'm so sorry. Yeah, it's really important that the project works and seeks to achieve the aims of the We Hope project. It's very much a project about social benefit, bringing forward these authentic stories of people into shared spaces where we all live, work and inhabit. We'd like to make sure that the work can be presented physically, but can also potentially be presented digitally. We have a network of international partners, and the hope for this work is that after it premieres in Lincoln and hopefully Brighton in October, that it's able to tour through the national and international partnerships. We know as well that this is an uncertain time, so we will work with the selected artists to look at an exhibition and touring strategy, to make links and make presentation in those places. But with the times that we're living in, we're having to look at some new approaches and new forms towards commissioning that can help us achieve these aims and make sure that the work doesn't become siloed in one specific place. There's a real aim with this project to look at some level of interactivity, in the sense that there are a number of shared themes or shared perspectives that emerge from this really, really, really authentic living testimony that's coming from these survivors of conflict, and also from the historical perspective as well. So we're not being prescriptive about how we would like that to work, but there is a thing that in the nature of promoting transnationalism, to bring people back together, to look at shared characteristics, to spark a kind of human engagement and a human emotion, it'd be really, really positive for audiences to feel that, whether that's through the digital or physical realm, that they're able to bring something of their voice to that as well. Ability to tour, like I say, and as I mentioned previously, we will work with the selected artist or artists to find the best way to do that. And also as well, just as a note, which is covered later in some of the practicalities, as part of the application process, we've asked you to submit an outline budget, but do note that although presentation costs for Lincoln would be expected to be in there as part of your production costs, we will be looking at separate pots for national touring, national and international touring. So your budget doesn't need to cover that in this instance. The work needs to be developed and presented within COVID secure guidelines, which are consistently in flux, but through working with Frequency and through working with that festival partner, we'll make sure that those health and safety guidelines are adhered to. And while we're working through the technical development of the work, it's something that we can also think about in terms of how we cite and how we present. And we want it to be relevant to our audiences and to think about diversity and accessibility in order to be as inclusive as possible. So, you know, in terms of public spaces, we'll think about presentation, we'll think about how we can create sites that don't present barriers to participation, but also as well, you know, thinking about that immersed audience experience and thinking about how we can remove barriers to participation. So that is an overview really of what we're looking from ideas. If anyone has any questions around that, then feel free to put them into the chat and we can come back to them at the end as well. And yeah, so those are some of the nuts and bolts. So what we'd like to move on to and just spend a little bit of time on is thinking through kind of some of the themes and some of the stories that are emerging from this work. And Laura's been working with us really closely to do some kind of early experimentation and testing and thinking through some of those themes. So I'm going to hand over to Laura now to just pick up for us on the next part.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam. My role here is to show you and to involve you, showing the process about artistic point of view, connect with we hope from the beginning of our meeting till now. The idea is mash up. At the beginning is a mashup, several cultures and several approach come from one side to the historical point of view and university approach, and for the other side, one of the possibility of an contemporary art approach. The first blog, we tried to use the blog of We Hope, an experimental laboratorio. That means the first blog is a mashup from words and language come from the specialist historical blog post already done and published, and the video game, and in particular in a form with the Fortnite video game and words and iconic. That means I use my history because it's easy for me, not because I'm an egocentric for all, but simply because it's easy to find the right approach come from our ancestor roots, and I choose from my history family, my grandfather, the history of grandfather, spent 3 years into the world, in the First World War in Europe, and I put together the history of my grandfather, the photograph of part of each of us has a so beautiful history of our family, and they mesh together with the language of video game. What's happened? The first problem coming out was when I write in my natural language, I know what I'm doing. And everyone as Italian know that. The same when the video gaming spoke about a language typical of video game. They understand there. But when we mix together and when you translate in several languages, we lost a lot of meaning of that. The second blog, please, Sam, can you show the second slide, please? Okay. In the second blog, I continue to mash up the question, because we hope is a process of mash up several aspects connect with the main subject. I asked to my student to analyze a real history connect with the COVID death in Bergamo province, one of the most published place in the world connect with the COVID problem in Italy. And I asked her to analyze through her language and her ability to use the video game and the military language. I asked them to write a history connect with the real death connect with the COVID. And she used a testimony and document come from the family. And at the end of everything, again, the problem is connect together and become understandable the translation of the meaning of everything. And then we hope is a huge goal to mix together, to mash up together, and to find other kind of way to see through Cantastorie. Cantastorie is the last form connect with this process. Sam, can you go ahead? The last blog was found the word connect with everything, and the only word that I found is trauma. Trauma is translating in 75 language in the same sound or type. That's mean in Latin language, in Greek language, in Sanskrit language, we have the same roof. That is so important connect with the word, with the testimony, and with the open call with you, with the artist. I ask, this is the last experience that I done, that we done because we work together with the Sam. I tried to do a small experience of deconstruction connect with trauma. And I asked to the team to be part of this small experience. The experience was write or drawing or take photograph connect with the personal trauma. I transform that in sign and in tattoo, temporary tattoo, and I ask to the people to hold this, to put in the only part free to see for the other, and connect with a typical way to sign in generally in the Russian culture. What happened? The experiment is so interesting because an Italian woman asked to do an experience of personal trauma so strong into the We Hope team for almost 4 different language and culture. And what happened? Only Italian woman reply. And this is so interesting. I want to show this because it's important as artists to understand that culture is our roof, and we couldn't miss our culture. This is only to show you what happened into the table team till now. I finish. If you have some question, obviously I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. I couldn't find my video just for a minute. Thank you very much, Laura. Yeah, so like I say, if there are any questions, do feel free to either send them through to us or put them into the chat box. The final part of this is just some of the nuts and bolts really of what we're looking for in terms of an application. And we know that it takes work to go into these applications, so we wanted to try and make the process kind of as simple as possible, and we are open to alternative methods of application. So if you have any ND requirements, or if you would prefer to submit by video or through audio, then please do just let us know. And what we're looking for is an overview creative proposal that highlights the idea and addresses any requirements that you think that you may have. We know that you may not necessarily have a full idea, but even if there's a thing of additional support or additional technical expertise that you think you might need, then please do either highlight that of who you think you'd be working with or where you think we can support you to help find that. Send us through some examples of your previous work and a copy of your CV, and just an outline budget as well. We know that this will change when we get into the process, but we'd just like to see how you are working with the fee that's outlined. And as I mentioned earlier, touring and exhibition will be worked out separately. So if you work on the basis of the idea that there's one presentation of the work, then we have additional budget that can be brought to touring and exhibition. Please do give us your contact information so we can reach out and get in touch with you after. And if you do have an image, which we know is difficult when the work's being created, but if you have an image or anything that kind of illustrates your idea, then please do share that with us as well. The deadline for applications is 5 p.m. on the 5th of July. And the contact information is there for where to send applications to Digital Democracies at thresholdstudios.tv. And the timeline, just as a reminder, is that 5th of July deadline will be closed, and we will let applicants know by the 12th of July in order to have the work ready to be shown in Lincoln on the 28th, between the 28th and the 31st of October at Frequency Festival, and also hopefully as part of Brighton Digital Festival as well. Yeah, so that is everything for this. Thank you very much for your time. I'll just have, sorry, I'm just moving Zoom boxes around. If you do have any questions, then feel free to put them in the chat, or you can email through to Digital Democracies after as well. I haven't got anything in there, so I assume that we covered everything, which is great. But yeah, like I say, if there is anything else that you want to follow up with, oh, well, I said that. Now there's one in the chat, bear with me. Oh, thank you, that's great. Thanks very much. Yeah, anything else you need, please do just give us a shout while the call out is live. Best contact email is to send it to Digital Democracies at thresholdstudios.tv. And yeah, that is the end of our briefing. So thank you very much for your time today. We look forward to receiving some great applications in the future. And yeah, thank you very much as well, Laura and Heather. It was really great to have you here for this as well.
Thank you for you and Heather, and thank you to Stefan.
Yeah, lovely. Have a nice day. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.